You know, I don't think he's changed at the core of who Oral is. I don't think he's changed at all. I mean, I think it was a terrible time for him when he had to close down the hospital and close down the medical school and the law school and the dental school because he felt a failure then. And although he said the medical missions had been taken up by the Assembly of God Church, resumed doing medical missions to Africa, and he pointed to that as a reason why it was no longer necessary for him to operate the hospital. He saw it as a great defeat. And yet he said, I'll have to do this. I have to close the hospital, and I have to close the medical school and the law school and the dental school to save my university. And the university was the underpinning of everything, is that if you could take young people and you could shape them and show them how to believe in God and to take that out, then they would take the message throughout the world. And you were going to build a better world with these young people. And he believed that totally. He believed that was the future. And I have not talked to him since the financial problem started. In fact, the last time I spoke to him was very briefly when his wife Evelyn died. And of course that was just devastating beyond belief for him, because she had been in relatively good health compared to his. And then she fell and died and was gone, you know, before anyone knew that she was in jeopardy. She was gone. And he said, it's my life partner. It's somebody who shared in my vision and who believed in me even more than I believed in myself. And so that was a terrible, terrible conversation, and just over the phone then. A lot of people assume that Oral is relatively uneducated, but he's a voracious reader, and he loves reading history books, but he also, if he finds a topic that interests him, then he leaps into it with both feet. He also was extraordinarily stubborn. Once he would decide something, and once he would announce something, then it didn't make any difference how much his advisors told him that there was an error here, or there was a mistake, or that something was not possible. I'm told that the only one who could really cancel him when they got into the board was Evelyn, and that Evelyn's question was always, but Oral, where are we going to get the money? But Oral believed that his prayer partners, that if he stood out there and preached to them, that he could describe his vision, describe his dream, and they would make it happen. But as he found out when he had to close down the medical school and law school and dental school, he told me, he said, you know, as long as I'm building something, as long as I've given them something with bricks, they'll send me the money. He said when the bricks stopped going up, they stopped sending the money. And that was a continuing problem. He would set a course and decide that he was going to do something. And as long as they could see visible evidence, his prayer partners, the people who watched him and sent him the money, would send it. And in fact, his own record showed that in the 3-year period when he was building the City of Faith, they were sending money through the mail in excess of $180 million a year. And that's why he was able to say, when this opens, everything will be paid for. And it was. But it was keeping it open. It was keeping it open at first when he couldn't get patients there, and then when he announced on his television show that wherever you were, come to the City of Faith and we will treat you. Once he announced something, he believed it totally and never wanted to back down off of that. He could be very harsh with the people around him, very stern. He didn't brook people who didn't understand him. He wanted to say something once and have it understood, and he didn't want anybody that questioned or doubted him. I mean, you didn't last very long in Oral's circle. Of course, I think he kind of liked having a skeptical reporter coming in and asking him the questions. It just gave him a sounding board, somebody to try. He told me, he said, "You're my devil. You're my devil's advocate in here." And so that I think sometimes he tried out his pitch. He tried out his plan to see how it would go over on me before he launched it on the air. Because that was the other thing that you have to realize, is that really he communicated that through that television show. I mean, it was when he was standing up there, and he refused to put the makeup on. His son could. That was fine for him to use the makeup under those lights, but he refused to do that. He was just oral, and he would refuse to stand where they wanted him to stand, and he refused to do anything they wanted him to do, because once he got on his message, he just wanted to be able to preach. And that communicated itself. Whether you go back to the earliest films, because that was another thing that he did that was very smart, is that from the very beginning, he filmed himself preaching in those revival tents. And then he would buy time on networks at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, who's going to watch it? Well, there were some. There would be some people who would see it. And because that time was practically given away, he managed to get broad distribution of himself, of his message. I asked him one time, and I said, "But you spend all of this money buying all this time on the TV stations when you could use it to feed poor people or to pay for that medical care for poor people." And he said, if Jesus were alive in the 20th century, he'd be on TV. He'd have a TV show. Lindsay told me that the very first time she met him, that she had gone out with Richard, and it was about their third date. And Richard said, "You know, my parents want to meet you, so we're going to swing by the house and you're going to meet Mom and Dad." And when she got there, Evelyn greeted her, in the front of the house and said, "Well, he's back in the bedroom." And so Richard led her back, and Oral was in bed in his pajamas reading. And apparently he meets a lot of people in his bed, in his pajamas. That's where he likes to get to think and to study, and so that impromptu meetings on the side of his bed are quite frequent. I think that he was somebody who set out to accomplish things, and a lot of it he did accomplish. And he did build that university in South Tulsa and brought it at a time when it was just a cow pasture. He envisioned a university, and he made that happen. And he brought a lot of young people who went through that university who cite the university as the beginning where they made their plans and where they got their vision for the future. And all that was good. He did open medical clinics throughout the Caribbean and through Africa and South America, and undoubtedly saved lives there. And he believed totally in his message. He believed that he had been chosen by God. And I think that would be the most disturbing thing, to have people laugh it off and think that he was doing it for profit, because he may have profited and he may have become famous, but he did genuinely believe that God had told him to do this, and this is what he had to do. For years, he wouldn't talk to any other reporter, not just from around here, but anywhere. And so when I would do a story on one of these things, then I would get calls from literally all over the world from different reporters. And he told me many times, he said, "Well, I don't always agree with what you write, but you're fair. You're fair about it." So that was our understanding.